In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Patricia Kind in honor of her brother, Henry Van Ameringen, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and these funders, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.
South Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and Key West are leading gay tourist destinations.
In South Florida, if you're gay, it doesn't really matter.
Yet on a legislative level, Florida remains one of the most homophobic states in the U.S.
The adoption application in the state of Florida actually asks, are you homosexual?
Tonight on In the Life, Florida's past and present struggles to overcome discrimination. A look at the Gill family's challenge to Florida's homosexual ban on adoption. And Liza with a Z speaks to the lady in question, Charles Busch.
I've been labeled as a gay icon. Well, no, Sherlock.
The fact that we've got activists here is important because it's a reminder that change never comes, or at least never begins in Washington.
I was invited to the White House to be part of the Pride reception, and just days earlier I had shared a panel with Martin Gill. I have a picture of his children that was taken at the White House. When I got the invitation, I said, I'm going to do everything I can to put that picture in the president's hands.
Can I give you this? These two young boys came to the White House for the Easter egg roll. Florida's adoption law may take them away from the only parents they've known. I really appreciate you. I appreciate that.
I was able to put that picture and a note in the president's hand and tell him that we need his voice to stop this family from being torn apart. Florida stands alone as the only state that requires that you take a heterosexuality oath in order to be able to adopt.
Florida is not one of the more welcoming states to the LGBT community. Not only can you not get married in the state of Florida, not only can you not have a civil union or a domestic partnership in the state of Florida, the adoption application actually asks, are you homosexual, yes or no?
In the 70s, Miami-Dade County brought forth this human rights ordinance to protect on the basis of sexual orientation.
Debate over the controversial ordinance drew the largest crowd of citizens ever seen at a Metro Commission public hearing.
Miami-Dade County may have been the first jurisdiction in the United States to pass a human rights ordinance.
The commission voted 5-3 in favor of the ordinance. Opponents shouted.
Then, of course, everybody knows the story.
The war goes on to save our children because the seed of sexual sickness that germinated in Dade County has already been transplanted.
Anita Bryant swept through Miami-Dade County and managed to get our local human rights ordinance repealed. And then she took our act up to Tallahassee and got a ban on gay and lesbian individuals from adopting, with no evidence, barely any debate, and sadly, that ban remains in place still today.
Anita Bryant's Save Our Children campaign was really a campaign implying that all gay people are pedophiles, that children are inherently at risk in the company of gay people. Florida was sort of ground zero for some of the most virulent anti-gay propaganda in the country.
Hold my hand. We're in the parking lot. Come on. Let's go see the horses.
Horsey. Horsey.
In December of 2004, we got a call from the Department of Children and Families, and they wanted to place 2 more young brothers with us.
I can tell you the story of Martin Gill and his case on many different levels. There's a legalistic level, there's a public policy level. But here was a guy and his partner, and the state knocks on their door and says to him, "You've been such a good foster parent. We have these two terribly neglected brothers. Could you just take them for a little while?"
She said, 1 month. That's all I need. They arrive at our door with the social worker. I immediately saw that it was going to be more work than perhaps we had thought, because as the older one walked in, he was 4 years old, and his head was completely covered with ringworm to the point that his hair was no longer growing on top. Next thing, she hands me the baby, and she said, "He has a fever, and he has a really bad ear infection, but don't worry, he's got medication in the bag." And with that, she was off. A few minutes later, I looked in the bag and started looking at the medication, and I'm holding the baby and reading the medication, and I realized that it hadn't been opened yet. And one was amoxiclav. It had gone completely bad. She had said that it was a neglect case, but I couldn't imagine this baby being sick and no one taking out the time to give him the medication. That just broke my heart.
A month or two turns into 5 years. The infant of these two brothers, this is the only home he has ever known. Both of these kids are now thriving. They've done a marvelous job as foster parents. So after 5 years, the state arrives in their home and says, "You've done an excellent job, but of course you know we have to remove these kids from your home and break up your family because you're gay."
At that point, my heart was breaking. My partner, who's African American, his reaction straight to the caseworker's face, he said, "Oh, hell no, this is not going to happen." We're plaintiffs in an ACLU lawsuit against the state of Florida to get rid of the ban on adoption by gay parents.
The Martin Gill case is the only case in which we had a full trial on the evidence. And we brought the leading experts from around the world to a courtroom here in Miami, as did the state. Turns out that the state's leading expert was Riekers.
George Riekers is a self-proclaimed expert, and I say self-proclaimed because no one else recognizes him as an expert on the issue of gay people being dangerous to children.
The crucial thing to understand about Riekers is that he's been responsible for the research that claims that gay people can't make good parents. That's why I was happy to find him with the rent boy.
You know, I did not believe the scoop when we first got it. Penn was at his computer, and he said something like, "Oh, this is interesting."
My source was a friend of the rent boy, and he had discovered an email between Riekers and him.
And we checked, and we saw that George Riekers and the rent boy were friends on Facebook, and that seemed strange.
My source was able to get me their flight information, and so my boyfriend had the great idea of going to the airport, meeting them there, and taking a paparazzi shot. And that's how that picture that went around the world was born. There were nude massages in Europe. There was something short of sex. There was sort of this puritanical massage where Riekers would get aroused but wouldn't get off.
George Riekers has become quite toxic. The good news is that people are taking a closer look at these junk scientists that get brought in to try and prop up these long discredited homophobic ideas.
What's also striking is that he testified in Arkansas in 2004. His testimony's thrown out. That doesn't deter our Attorney General, Bill McCollum, from hiring him in 2008 to do exactly the same thing for $120,000. A bunch of taxpayer money was wasted on it, and it kind of revealed that our political class here in Florida is homophobic and tied in with this pseudo-academic world where gay people are considered deviants.
Well, politically, Florida is a very complex state. The panhandle of our state looks very much like the Bible Belt. South Florida, in many senses, it could look something like the Northeast. And then, of course, there is the I-4 corridor in Central Florida, where a lot of the decisions end up being made because of the high number of swing voters.
Especially down here in Southeast Florida, there's a comfort level, and people just can't believe that our rights would be taken away. They don't see the discrimination, they don't have the fear that they're going to get thrown out of their apartment by a crazy landlord. But for a segment of our population, particularly in the state of Florida, those are very real and valid concerns.
Florida is a massive state. When you're standing in our capital in Tallahassee, you're about as close to Chicago, Illinois, as you are to Key West, Florida. It's a huge state, and there are parts of our state that are as progressive as any other place you'll find in the country.
The first openly gay mayor in the United States was a guy named Richard Hyman. I call Key West a small town with an open mind, and that's who we are. We have an openly gay police chief, we have an openly gay county commissioner. We have led the way, I think, in many ways to make it comfortable for LGBT folk to serve publicly.
I'm from Key West. I was born and raised here. 5 generations of my family have been in Key West. I think it all starts at the top. And I think that it's very important that whoever's a CEO or head of whatever organization is very clear that there will be no discrimination.
Key West today is really, it's very well integrated. City of Key West and the County of Monroe both have human rights ordinances. We have domestic partnership benefits. So in terms of the day-to-day living for most people here, it's not an issue. Where it does get to be an issue is when we want to do things like adopt children. And that's one of the things that we're really fighting against right now.
This is the map of the state of Florida that you can get on Equality Florida's website. And it's pretty amazing where some of the pockets are, because you'd think that everything would be clustered down here in the south. But there are some other incredible, look at Gainesville. Gainesville has a safe schools policy banning harassment and discrimination, and they have a human rights ordinance which not only bans discrimination based on sexual orientation, but also based on gender identity.
I've lived in Gainesville for 28 years. Gainesville is a place where a few people can get involved and make a real difference. And that's been very much the case in the advancement of LGBT rights.
I actually began my transition here. Gainesville has a lot of resources for transgender people and also for the larger LGBT community.
I think the University of Florida is really welcoming. A lot of people that I know that have moved to Gainesville to come to school felt like it was going to be a really welcoming place, and that's definitely true. Like, I'm out around campus and I can walk around, hold hands with my girlfriend, and it's absolutely no problem. I never have gotten a comment or anything about it.
And we did pass an ordinance in 2008 that added gender identity to our anti-discrimination ordinance. But that brought in a large number of religious political extremists.
They had little kids out there protesting with them, holding signs that fags are going to hell. There were people all over the place that were trying to put up signs around local bathrooms saying, men are free to use this women's restroom, be careful, you can get raped.
And it did trigger a referendum effort, which was a charter amendment that said that the city of Gainesville could not pass any equal opportunity protections that were not in Florida state law.
It's a bunch of outside interference from the rural areas outside of Gainesville, which are far more conservative than the city of Gainesville itself. They wanted to try and take down Craig Lowe, who was a representative of progress that Gainesville was making.
I was frankly shocked at some of the stuff that we saw. The no homo mayor sign put outside of a local church. The local pastor of the church that posted the sign released a YouTube video.
Gay, fag, whatever you want to call him, I don't care. Bottom line is we cannot afford a homo mayor.
I was shocked. You'd like to think that in 2010 we're sort of past that type of scapegoating.
Craig Lowe decided that, no, that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do for Gainesville.
Strong neighborhood protections and programs to help stimulate our local economy. And I believe that we were successful in doing that, because you can't run a city on negativity.
The actual city of Gainesville itself proved that they support equality, and outside interference is not going to stop that. They did it with both Craig Lowe and extended protections to lesbian, bisexual, gay, and transgendered people.
What we're seeing is that a number of municipalities in Florida, cities and counties, are proactively passing good policies, policies that provide protections for LGBT individuals. But all of this has taken place on sort of an ad hoc basis, a community here, a community there.
I think the paradox of Florida is that there is this enclave in South Florida and other places, but then the legislature as a whole is very homophobic.
Part of it is redistricting. Over the life of Equality Florida, we have shifted public opinion dramatically in our favor. As a matter of fact, Floridians are with us on repealing the adoption ban, but it's not translating in Tallahassee because districts are drawn in a way that protect incumbents, and right now that means protecting conservative Republicans. In fact, I had the experience of walking into a legislator's office. The moment I said, "I'm here to talk to you about the adoption ban," he said, "You don't have to convince me that this is a terrible, terrible law." He said, "My daughter's best friend is raised by two moms. They're our neighbors, they're great parents, and this law is terrible. But you have to understand, my district is one of the most conservative districts in this state. And to come out publicly against this ban, I wouldn't survive my primary. If you get it to the floor," he said, "I'll vote against it."
As a parent, you really have to look out for your own kids first. We were awarded the adoption in November of 2008. Unfortunately, the state chose to appeal that decision, but it gives me a certain amount of pride in knowing that this case will probably do away with the ban. We're about halfway through now. We've got a long way to go.
I really feel strongly that that we're going to win the decision if we do prevail. The issue is, are we going to be prepared enough and resourced enough to be able to withstand the ferocious response to our victory? We saw what happened in California. We saw it happen in other states. The issue is preserving the legal victory that I know in my heart that we're going to win.
The lawsuit that has the potential to end Florida's adoption ban may also spark a ballot campaign to put that ban right back into our Constitution. 2010 is going to be one of the most important elections in Florida's history. Every single statewide office is changing hands. Everything is up for grabs. The ability in the midterms for our community and fair-minded Floridians to have an incredible impact has never been higher.
You grew up in a way that was so chronicled. Everybody has a big fat opinion about your life and your mother's life and you know.
Liza Minnelli, legendary star of stage and screen and a gay icon, recently came to In the Life to chat with her friend, actor and playwright Charles Busch.
And I was watching Cabaret again for about the 250th time, and I was just so taken with just how completely contemporary it is. Didn't I read that your father actually was the one who came up with the idea of the Sally Bowles haircut?
Oh God, he was such an influence in that movie. I cannot tell you.
So he would tell you something, then you would share it with Fosse?
Well, it couldn't work quite like that. You can't really say, my dad said,
But now you'd already had worked with Cantor Nebb because you had done Flora the Red Menace.
Yes, and Liza with the Sea. We'd started to work on that already.
Fred Ebb was an enormous mentor to you. What were some of the things that Fred Ebb gave you as a mentor?
He said, first of all, you're not going to sing anything that your mother sang. We have to write a song that is completely yours. And they wrote Liza with a Z.
It's Liza with a Z, not Lisa with an S, because Lisa with an S goes snaz. It's Z instead of
See, I've always been able to recognize the talented people that taught me.
Because now Kander Neb, when you first met them, they weren't Kander Neb yet.
No.
I mean, they were just as fresh as
Fred
you were.
and Johnny. And they wrote Liza with a Z, and that gave me my identity, so off we went.
Another person that was so important in your life was the great designer Halston. How'd you meet him?
I met him through my godmother, Kay Thompson.
Oh.
She introduced me to him because she said, put this on. And I did, and it looked great. And she said, that suits you. Come. And she took me to Bloomingdale's, or as she called it, Blooming Balls. I'm not disrespecting Bloomingdale's whatsoever. I can't tell you how many wonderful names because I lived there practically. So we went off and she showed me these marvelous outfits and they suited me. So she introduced me to Halston. It was wonderful. And he was my dearest friend.
I wasn't sure what I was doing.
2 weeks before their conversation, Charles had presented Liza with PFLAG's Straight for Equality and Entertainment Award. And Liza presented the audience with a song.
I never kissed a man before. Now isn't that a shame? I never kissed a man before I knew his name.
When you were 16 years old, suddenly on your mother's TV show or on the Jack Paar show or thrown into these big, high-profile situations when you're raw, what were the various things going on in your head? I mean, it must have been thrilling and terrifying at the same time, wasn't it?
No.
I mean, no.
It wasn't terrifying because I was always able to recognize who to gravitate towards, and that was the talented people. I was always able to know who to go to learn, and it was an adventure.
Where did you get that kind of drive from the beginning just to, at 16 years old, come to New York on your own? And I mean, what were you thinking? It's hard sometimes to go back and remember what our thought processes were when we were younger, but can you try to recreate a little bit of that?
Watching. I loved to watch. I loved the thought process. I loved, journeying through MGM. I had a bike they gave me, and I was all over that studio. It was like my playground.
So you were on the set of Brigadoon and American in Paris. You'd be too young to remember.
Oh, I remember.
Do you remember when they shot the famous ballet sequence?
Oh yes, and I remember the smoke coming through the funnels in the American in Paris ballet.
Oh my God!
I watched everything, and I loved it. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but I've been labeled as a gay icon. Well, no, Sherlock.
I have this image that if showbiz was a huge banquet, there's a special table where a very select group of extraordinary women are seated, and you're at that table, and I guess we would say these are the gay icons. I mean, it's you and your mother and Bette Midler and Barbra Streisand. I guess Cher kind of is maybe sitting over here, maybe. but there, this is like a table of extraordinary women. Did it take a while to sort of understand that or accept the idea that you have this big gay following?
Why?
In the 60s, your career spans a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s,
I'll say.
In the 60s, gay people weren't even out. So I think even the women who, in a certain sense, the women they loved weren't out.
I've always thought of the audience as my audience. When those people walk into the theater, we're together for 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think of of anybody as anything.
You know, you were one of the first celebrities to really throw yourself into sort of AIDS activism, but you lost some key people in your life to AIDS. And
Yes.
was that what spurred you on?
No, I don't think it was a group of people. I think it was just the people I loved. I thought of individuals as opposed to a certain kind of person or what they did behind closed doors. They're my friends. You know, and their privacy was in a funny kind of way their privacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up to respect privacy. We were taught that.
I think that often gay people can identify with the outcast, and they survive, and they get through it all, and they make it. Look how we've made it, all of us. I know from survival, believe me. I just had my knee replaced, and just standing here is surviving.
Thank you for watching In the Life. To learn more about the issues in tonight's program, or to tell us your thoughts about the show, text ITL to 69866 on your mobile phone, or visit itlmedia.org. You can also download and share episodes, watch exclusive webcasts, extended interviews, and sign up for In the Life airdate alerts.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Patricia Kind in honor of her brother, Henry Van Ameringen, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and these funders, and by the annual support of In the Life members like you.